Hello again, and welcome to the Interchange Book 3 video series. Today we're going to be doing Unit 11. And in today's lesson, we're talking about past modals and the hypothetical past. So let's get started. Okay, so here we have a boy, and he's reflecting, right? And he's thinking about tomorrow. Why? Because tomorrow he has a test. So he's thinking to himself, I should study. I should study. So this is a suggestion, right, for himself about now or about in the near future, tomorrow, tonight. But he's using the present tense modal to make a suggestion. So just the normal modal and the base form of the verb is the present modal for things now or for things in the future. Okay? So today, we're going to look at how to make this type of suggestion, but in the past tense.
Okay, so let's take a look at this situation, okay, over here with this boy. Okay, he's playing video games, and we're thinking about what he did in the past, okay? And it says here, I didn't study for my test. Okay, it says, I played video games. Okay, so he didn't study for the test. Instead, he played video games. So what do you think happened when he took the test? What do you think happened to him in the future? Well, maybe this happened, okay? It says, I failed the test, right? 61%. Okay, he failed the test. All right? So this is what happened to him. But now let's take a look at the big picture. The big picture of things. So here we are now in the present tense. And the same boy is thinking about what happened to him, right? He's having a reflection. He's thinking about the past. He's having a reflection about the past, about what he did here. He didn't study for the test. He played video games. He failed the test, and now he's thinking about that, okay? So he's thinking about this in a hypothetical way. It's the past, right? Now, what is he thinking? Well, maybe he's thinking, for example, well, I should have studied, right? The reality is that I didn't study for the test. But now he's thinking, well, I should have studied. Or maybe he's thinking, well, I played video games, that was the reality. But now he's thinking, well, I shouldn't have played video games. Okay? So these are regrets. These are regrets that he has about something he did in the past. Okay? And this is the grammar that we're going to look at today. This grammar is what we call a past modal. Okay? A past modal is for a hypothetical past, right? He's thinking about the past in a different way, and he has a regret about what he did, something he wished he didn't do, or maybe he did do. Okay? So let's take a closer look at this grammar. So this grammar is called the past modal, and it's for the hypothetical past, like we said. Okay? And a past modal basically consists of a modal verb, okay, of some type. Then we have the auxiliary verb have, and then we have a past participle. Okay? So there's three parts to this. A past modal has three parts. It has a modal, then the auxiliary verb have, then the past participle as the principal verb. So what type of modals do we use? Well, let's take a look. We have three that we use normally. For example, should, could, and would for the hypothetical pasts. Should we use mostly for regrets and suggestions. Okay? Could we use for possibilities. And would we use for intentions. Okay, so we use should, could, and would. Should, could, and would, plus an auxiliary have, plus the past participle, and that's the past modal. Now, quickly let's look at some contractions that we can make with our past modals. Okay, So we use the contraction with our modal verb and on our auxiliary verb. For example, should and have, we can put those together and make the contraction. Should have. Again, repeat with me. Should have. Should have. Good. And we can make the contraction with could and have, okay, to make the contraction could have. Again, repeat with me. Could have. Could have. Right. And again, we can make a contraction with would and have, and it sounds like this. Would have. Would have. Good. So those are the contractions that we can make with our modal and our auxiliary verb. So let's take a look at a few examples, okay? Let's set a situation up. For example, there was a party last weekend. There was a party last weekend, okay? So let's look at some ideas that we use with past modals. For example, I didn't go to the party last weekend. And my regret, okay, I'm going to use should. So I say I should have gone to the party. Again, I'm using my modal verb should, my auxiliary verb with have in the contraction here, and the past participle gone. I should have gone to the party. That means I didn't go, but my regret is I should have gone. Or maybe I did go to the party. I did go to the party, but it was a bad idea for some reason, so I can use a negative. For example, I shouldn't have gone to the party. Again, this is the negative with the modal shouldn't, have for the auxiliary verb, and gone for the past participle, right? So should for the regrets. Let's take a look with possibility. Remember possibility, I use things like could, or maybe in the negative couldn't. So maybe it was not possible for me to go to the party. So another way to say this is saying a past modal, I could have gone to the party. Or, for example, I have my modal verb could, my auxiliary verb have, and the past participle still, right? Or it wasn't possible for me to go to the party. I couldn't have gone to the party, right? So the negative with couldn't, auxiliary verb, and the past participle, right? So possibility, could and couldn't. Now let's take a look at our last ones, okay? For example, with an intention, okay? So it's a hypothetical idea. I would have gone to the party if something else happened. Or I wouldn't have gone to the party if something else had happened. So these, right, are about intentions when I use would, okay? But the main idea that you need to understand about the past modal is that you always are using some type of a modal verb. You always are going to use the auxiliary verb have, and you're always going to use some type of a past participle, right? So we always have three parts to this: modal, past participle, the auxiliary verb, and number 3, the past participle. Okay. So at this time, you need to pause and practice. Okay? So pause the video and do the following exercise. In this exercise, you need to match the information from column A here with column B here. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video. When you're finished and you think you have your answers correct, press play and you can see the answers. Okay, so here are the answers for the previous exercise. So again, if you need to, press pause to check your answers, and when you're finished, press play to continue the video. Okay, so now you've finished the first half of the grammar explanation. We're going to continue with Unit 11, and we're going to talk about our third conditional, okay? Now the third conditional is a hypothetical past. It's when we imagine the past in a different way. So let's take a look at what we're talking about. Okay, so you guys remember this situation, right? We remember our friend and what happened to him. It says, I didn't study for my test and I failed the test, right? So I didn't study for my test. That's a real condition. It really happened. And I failed the test. That's the real result. That really happened, okay? So let's take a look again at the big picture. So again, here we are in the present tense, and he is thinking about the past. And he's thinking about the past in a hypothetical way, right? He's imagining the past differently. Now, the real past was the real condition and the real result. The real past is I didn't study for my test and I failed the test. That's the real past. Now he's imagining all of that in a different hypothetical way. So he's imagining a different hypothetical condition, okay? So here he is studying, and that gives him a hypothetical result. Ooh, he does very, very well in this test. Okay, so his hypothetical condition, what is he thinking? He's thinking, well, if I had studied, right? If I had studied, and his hypothetical result would be, I wouldn't have failed. Aha. So, hypothetically, if I had studied, I wouldn't have failed. Now, this is what we call the third conditional. It's imagining a different result for the past. Okay? Now, the hypothetical result. Let's look at this real quick. Let's look at our verbs. What kind of grammar is that? Does anyone recognize it? Right, it's the past perfect. Okay? And the hypothetical result, right? Let's look at this. Here's our verbs. What kind of grammar is that? Okay, good. You might recognize that from the first part of the video. That's a past modal. So we use the past perfect and the past modal to use our third conditional. So let's take a look at this a little bit closer. All right, so remember we said the third conditional is imagining the past in a different way. So we start with a hypothetical condition. We always use if to set a condition. And when we're thinking about the past in a hypothetical way, we used the past perfect. So remember the past perfect is had for the auxiliary verb and the past participle for our principal verb. And that's the hypothetical condition. Then in our hypothetical result, we need to use a past modal. And if we remember, a past modal is always some type of a modal verb, have for the auxiliary, and for the past participle for the principal verb. Okay. So let's take a look. Let's read this. It says, if I had studied for the test, hypothetical condition, I would have passed. Hypothetical result. Right? Or let's take a look at the negative sentence. If I hadn't played video games, I could have studied more. Okay? So remember, our condition, hypothetically, we always use the past perfect. For example, if I had studied for the test, that's the past perfect. Or if I hadn't played, that's the past perfect, right, for our hypothetical condition. And the hypothetical result is the past modal. I would have passed, past modal. Or I could have studied, that's also a past modal, okay? So let's take a look at what we can do with this grammar, okay? Notice that when I use my hypothetical condition first, right, if I had studied for the test, I use that comma to separate that from my hypothetical result. I would have passed, right? But I can switch the order of these, and I can use my hypothetical result first, and then talk about the condition second, okay? But if I do this, okay, I no longer need these commas. I'm going to take those commas away. So if my hypothetical result is first, I don't need to use the comma. So here I can read it like this. I would have passed if I had studied for the test. Or I could have studied more if I hadn't played video games. So again, the order of the third conditional is not necessarily important, but maintaining the grammar for each of the hypothetical result and the hypothetical condition is. That's very important.
Okay, guys, so let's review the two types of grammar we saw today. Now we have the past modals, and we have past modals for regrets, possibility, and intentions. So if we remember, he's thinking about the past, he didn't study for the test, and he's thinking about a regret. And he says, I should have studied for the test. Again, my past modal is should have, and I use the past participle studied. to talk about a regret, something that I should have done or shouldn't have done, and now I feel bad about it. Those are regrets. Should have. Possibility, okay? We use could, and the past modal could have. So there's the past modal. I could have studied for the test. Again, the past participle studied. Very good. The last one we looked at were intentions. As a past modal, I can use would. Would have is the past modal. I would have studied for the test. Again, there's my past participle. Okay? Now, these are the past modals, and we use them for regrets, possibility, and intentions. And I want to focus on these two because that's a big part of the second grammar point we saw. So remember, a regret is usually something like this. I should have studied for the test. I didn't study. That was a bad idea. I regret that decision, so I say I should have studied for the test. But if he's thinking hypothetically about the past and how things could be different, he's using a third conditional. And the third conditional uses some of our past modals. So remember, if it's the condition, I use the past perfect. If I had studied more, remember had in the past participle, that's the past perfect, and that makes our condition in the past tense. If I had studied more, what's the result? I would have passed the test. And for our result, we use the past modal, right? My past modal and the past participle. So remember, past modals we can use for regrets, like this. I should have studied for the test. But we can also use them in a past hypothetical. And our past hypothetical starts with the past perfect. If I had studied more, I would have passed the test. Alright guys, very good. It's a very difficult grammar subject, but you guys are gonna get it and you're gonna do great. So, good luck and thanks for watching.